In this lesson number 20, the title of this one is The Presentation of the Temple Endowment. And I'm so excited to share this lesson with you. I want to say up front, I know this is a public video. The things that I share in this video will be in harmony with the spirit of the temple. In quotes and different sources that I will use will be from published sources of the church that are publicly available. And keeping sacred things sacred, of course, which should. But at the same time, I think it's necessary that we talk about the temple openly, that we talk about it clearly. As a matter of fact, I think we might have done a disservice in some previous generations in that we haven't prepared people well enough for the temple endowment to understand it, to understand why it happens and what is happening. As a matter of fact, I've done this experiment before with students of mine where I'll say, in one sentence, give me why we get baptized. And they'll give me a great one-sentence summary. Or in one sentence, tell me why we take the sacrament. In one sentence, tell me why we ordain people to priesthood offices. In one sentence, even give me why we seal a family or a couple together in the temple. And they can usually do it, and they do it well. But if I say to my students, most of them returned missionaries, in one sentence, tell me about the endowment, they can't do it. And not only can they not do it, not only do they not understand it, they don't even know what they can and can't say as a whole. That's a problem that I think we need to correct. We need to do better teaching the doctrinal purposes, the doctrinal reasons behind the temple, and the temple endowment in particular. In this video, I'm going to focus more on the presentation of the endowment, not the temple endowment itself. If you want to understand more about the endowment itself, I'd encourage you to go back and watch lesson number 14 in this series. But maybe that's a lesson right up front that I hope you grasp. I like to say to my students, there's a difference between endowment and the presentation of the endowment. Endowment is a power. The presentation of the endowment is a pedagogy or a method or an instruction. One is a ceremony, the endowment. The other one is a priesthood power that comes into our life. Lesson 14 will teach you about the power of endowment. This lesson will get into the presentation of the endowment as a whole. Well, a little personal history as we start. On May 3rd, 1842, my third great-grandfather, his name is Shadrach Roundy, got to do something cool. He and a few other men like Dimmick Huntington and Noah Rogers and Daniel Cams and Lucius Scoville, they were asked by Joseph Smith to come help him do something in his Nauvoo red brick store. They showed up there on May 3rd, 1842, and my third great-grandfather and these other men helped Joseph Smith rearrange the upper room of the main room of the red brick store and Joseph's office. They painted a mural on the wall. They brought in some plants and cedar boughs and olive branches and other things to suggest a garden-type setting. They divided up the room, the main big room, using rugs and canvases. And they even carried water. One of the men remembers carrying a bunch of water up and using it, placing it in Joseph Smith's little office space. In other words, what they did to the Nauvoo red brick store was they rearranged it as much as circumstances would permit, as they later recalled, to represent a temple interior, with Joseph Smith, in the words of Lucius Scoville, quote, dictating everything. The first presentation of the endowment in this dispensation that we know of anyway was given in that upper floor of the red brick store in Nauvoo, Illinois, the very next day on May 4th, 1842. And this is Joseph's journal entry from May 4th, 1842. Joseph said, I spent the day in the upper part of the store in council with General James Adams of Springfield, Patriarch Hiram Smith, Bishops Newell K. Whitney and George Miller, and President Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball and Willard Richards, instructing them in the principles and order of the priesthood, attending to washings, anointings, endowments, and the communication of keys pertaining to the Aaronic priesthood, and so on to the highest order of the Melchizedek priesthood, setting forth the order pertaining to the Ancient of Days, and all those plans and principles by which anyone is enabled to secure the fullness of those blessings which have been prepared for the church of the firstborn and come up and abide in the presence of Elohim in the eternal worlds. That's how Joseph Smith summarized the presentation of the endowment that he gave there in Nauvoo in 1842. And the reason why Joseph did it in the red brick store was because the Nauvoo temple was yet under construction, was not finished yet. And Joseph started to have an impending sense that his life was going to come to an end before the Nauvoo temple was finished. So he presented the ceremony of the endowment in the red brick store. He also presented the ceremony of the endowment in a few other places in Nauvoo. It was done in what's called his old homestead, his home that was built across the street. It was also done in the mansion house, the larger home that was finished that he moved into in Nauvoo. And there's records that the endowment was done also in Brigham Young's home there in Nauvoo. And why? Well, why were they doing this presentation of the endowment? Well, again, back to video 14, Joseph had been learning about the concept, the power of endowment all along. Ever since, I believe, as early as 1830, 31, Joseph is teaching about endowment and how to help people get the power of God in their life. But in Nauvoo, he's going to package everything by divine revelation and through prophetic authority into a ceremony or a presentation. The Lord told them to build a temple to do this. In Doctrine and Covenants, section 124, verse 28. Now, they built a temple in Kirtland, of course, but the temple in Kirtland did not have the different rooms and setup and spaces like we see in a modern temple today. This temple that the Lord tells them to build in Nauvoo would be a little bit different. He says in verse 41 that he's going to reveal things that have been kept hid, or things to reveal in verse 28, the fullness of the priesthood is what he calls, and to build a temple to do so. The Lord told Joseph Smith in verse 42 that he would show Joseph everything, quote, pertaining to this house and the priesthood thereof, or the priesthood ordinances thereof. Joseph would say in 1843 in a discourse with this idea of fullness of the priesthood, quote, if a man gets the fullness of God, he has got to get it in the same way that Jesus Christ obtained it. And that was by keeping all the ordinances of the house of the Lord, connecting to this greater endowment, or this fullness of the priesthood that would be revealed in Nauvoo through the temple endowment. As a matter of fact, this fullness of the priesthood, Joseph will sometimes call it the order, the holy order, or the order of the Son of God. We read about the order of the Son of God all the time in the scriptures, and sometimes we don't know what to mean or to make of it, the order of Melchizedek. I want you to think of order almost like a select group of people, which is one of the definitions of order. All of you who are Harry Potter fans out there, you know about Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix, this select group of people who fought against Voldemort. And I don't want to be too light in something as sacred as the temple and with the order of Melchizedek. But what Joseph was doing was he was helping people to enter into the order of the Son of God. In that earlier quote that I read to you, the order of the Ancient of Days, or the order of the priesthood is what Joseph would call it. Joseph would endow approximately 90 men and women into this order through the temple endowment ceremonies in his lifetime. This group was known as the Quorum of the Anointed, or sometimes simply as the Holy Order of God. And this was Joseph's way through these ceremonies to create an order of priests and priestesses. It was his way to help fulfill what Joseph had learned by revelation, that God intended to make people in his kingdom to become priests and kings and queens and priestesses who have received of his fullness after the order of Melchizedek. That's Doctrine and Covenants 76, 56, 57, talking about those who are exalted in heaven. Those who are after this order, according to section 107, verse 19, have the privilege of receiving the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, to have the heavens open unto them, to commune with the general assembly and church of the firstborn, to enjoy the communion and presence of God the Father and Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant. So I'm sharing these maybe a little bit more obscure or a little bit more esoteric verses to show that in Nauvoo, the Lord through his prophet is going to introduce these ceremonies to help people enter into a sacred order of priests, future priests and priestesses, people who can receive the fullness of God's power or priesthood, as we call it, a fullness of his blessings, a fullness to become like him, a fullness of exaltation of women and men together. Through these covenants and ordinances and teachings, to be able to know how to commune with God, how to have angels minister to them, and how to have understand the mysteries and teachings of the kingdom of God. That's what section 107 and 76 seems to be getting at with the temple endowment presentation. I hope this video has helped you to understand the presentation of the endowment as it was revealed line upon line and precept upon precept to Joseph Smith. As he was preparing in July of 1839, he said this, quote, "God hath not revealed anything to Joseph, but what he will make known unto the 12, and even the least saint may know all things as fast as he is able to bear them. For the day must come when no man needs to say to his neighbor, Know ye the Lord? For all shall know him, from the least to the greatest." I'm grateful for the temple that helps you and helps me through the presentation to become endowed with power from on high by God, to be connected to God by further covenants, to be initiated into an ancient sacred order of future priests and priestesses, so that one day you and I can learn and receive a fullness of the blessings of God in the next life. And in this life, through our covenants and through the truths we learn, have power to stay on that covenant path that's found and ultimately solemnized in the Holy Temple. God bless you and God bless me as we continue in this ongoing restoration through the Holy Temple.